Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Bishop. I direct the Center for Leadership and Development for Harding University. As I just said, this is our fourth and final conversation for our series called Workplace Coaching Conversations. And the webinars in this series have attempted to answer several questions about how coaching can be useful as a tool in the workplace. As a collection, these four webinars really offer a foundation of knowledge about what coaching is and what coaching can offer for you, for your organization as a whole. I'm joined today by Tanisha Haynes of 10 Thinks LLC out of Oklahoma. Tanisha is also an alum of our coaching program, and she's a leadership and organizational development consultant for Kimray, which is also in Oklahoma. Tanisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
I am grateful to be here.
Yay. Why don't you give us just a quick recap or tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
The quickest way that I try to explain it is that I create strategies to help grown-ups get along in the workplace so that the missions and goals of the organization can be accomplished as effectively as possible.
I love that. That's wonderful. Simple is always good. Yes. Um, so today we are going to focus on how coaching helps workplace teams. And as I like to do with all of these webinars that we do, I like to put our goals on the screen. It helps me stay accountable. It also lets our audience know what it is that we're trying to do today. So, our goals for today are to first explain the differences between individual and team coaching, as there are some noteworthy differences. We're also going to talk about some very common team challenges that many of us are all too familiar with. We've either faced them before or we're currently facing them. And we're going to talk about how coaching can help address those challenges. Of course, we want to leave you with at least one or two practical ideas or solutions that you might be able to actually use today or this week with your team. Tanisha, from your experience, what makes team coaching different from coaching individuals?
Sure. So, of course, coaching individuals is about that individual. What are their goals? Where are they now? Where do they want to go? And how do we get them there? The team becomes the unit at that point, and it's not
Mhm.
about any specific individual in the team. It's about the goal of the team. And so you have to consider the individuals who make up the team, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's where is the team now? Where does the team need to be? And then what are the tools? What are the strategies? What are the things that we need to do to get them there as a unit?
Yes. Yes. So, why do you think coaching is effective for improving collaboration or improving teamwork?
I think it's mostly effective because coaching is primarily a tool for self-awareness and other things, but it starts there. Its foundation is in self-awareness. And a team of people that can function in self-awareness are able to weather the challenges that come along working together as a team. The only thing that all of us have in common is that we're all different. And so, from that perspective, you have these differences coming together, all working towards a common goal with their own perspectives, their own kind of experiences and ways of being that all need to row in the same way. And so
Mhm.
coaching helps to, one, bring about the self-awareness that the individuals need to know how they can best contribute, but then it also keeps the goal and the tools in the forefront that will help that team get there.
Yes, 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 very good. So I want to invite you throughout our time together today to share anecdotes or stories or anything that comes to mind, because we always love a good story. What's an outcome that you've seen through some good team coaching?
My favorite story in this space is I worked with a team of people that had a really vital role for this state of Oklahoma as a whole. And they were mixed up in a lot of challenging things during and after the COVID season, and they were behind. And it had a significant impact to the state. A year and a half behind, as a matter, and really just depleted and defeated. And so their leader came to us and asked, "Hey, we just really think that our team needs some morale. They just really need to have maybe some team building, something along those lines." And I go in and I interview the leadership and ask questions and quickly realize, yeah, team building is not necessarily what's going to help this team, as defeated as they are based off of where they were. And so we went in and started with self-awareness, started with getting them aware, not just of themselves, but those types of exercises and activities, from an assessment perspective, helps the individual, but it's valuable in a team because it helps the whole team start to better identify their team members. It's not
Mm,
just self-awareness, but then it's others' awareness that you get, and there's a common language attached to it. And then
yes.
from there, we did activities, but we didn't have, case study exercises where they had to kind of take these tools from the self-awareness exercise and come together. We actually attacked their real problem.
Mm.
And we had sessions where we separated it, and they had the first session was we're throwing every idea out there that's possible. There is no such thing as a bad idea in this session. Now, for those people that had been identified as the kind of more logical and analytical, that was a horrible experience for them. But we prepped them saying, hey, this is not going to be your jam. And we use the self-awareness language, and we're able to apply it that way. But your
Yeah,
time is coming. The next session, we then flipped that and said, now here's your opportunity to poke holes in all of the things that it's not going to work. And through that activity, through that exercise, they were able to come up with a strategy and a plan that helped them to knock out 60% of their backlog in 4 months
wow.
because they were able to have a new perspective, and overcome some of the weight that the experience was causing. And it was contributing to them not being able to work well together as a team. But then also, coaching helps to see things differently. You get an
Yes.
awareness that you might not have already had. And they were able to take that and really get successful in knocking out that backlog.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. And it really kind of does follow that, when we're coaching an individual, we want them to be able to identify their goals. But then after that, part of a good coaching session is to talk about any obstacles that might be in your path. And so having those analytical people identify those obstacles is really very helpful.
Yeah.
I love that. Perfect. What a great story. I think it might be helpful for our audience if we do kind of talk about the differences between one-on-one coaching and team coaching. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly again. When we're talking about individual or one-to-one coaching in the workplace, there are generally three types of coaching that we're talking about. We've got executive coaching, performance coaching, and then leadership development coaching. Those three are one-to-one. It's one person with one coach. And that is a very common model that you're going to see in a lot of workplaces. The difference between team coaching and one-to-one coaching is that a coach is working with a group of people, but she's treating that group of people as a single unit. And that's where the biggest difference lies in team coaching and one-to-one coaching. What would you add to that, Tanisha?
I no, I think that that's pretty straightforward. I wouldn't add anything.
Okay. Hey, I did it. I did my work. Yay. Okay, so what do you see as the greatest need for team coaching in the modern workplace?
I think the greatest need for teams right now is navigating disruption.
Mm,
Um, I like to say disruption is the new normal. Everything is going to be consistently changing, and as humans, we function very differently in how we navigate change and our different levels of adaptability and flexibility and what comes from that. And so I think that the biggest need right now for team coaching is not specifically maybe like, okay, our team has this goal of getting from here to there, and how do we get there? But I think that the goal for a lot of teams right now should be how do we undergird and equip ourselves as best as possible to be more adaptable and flexible, and navigate change as healthy as possible, because that's going to be what's more normal for us. And that foundation is going to help us be successful with
yeah.
almost anything that we have to face.
Right. Yes. So when you are preparing for a team coaching, group coaching environment, what do you do differently, or how do you approach team differently than one to one?
I think with coaching, there's such a huge element that's relationship, one-to-one and team. And so getting to know the team, so understanding each individual in the team. So in the same way with individual coaching, you're going to take that time to get to know your client. You want the client to get to know you as a coach, so that that trust can be built.
Mm,
With a team, same thing. There's interview sessions that you might do with each individual and the team as a whole. And so, really, preliminary sessions where it's really just us getting to know each other. Um, Typically, that's also where I couple in those exercises and activities as a whole team, where we do that self-awareness work, try to
mm,
make it fun, try to make it engaging. It typically is, because most of us really like to learn about ourselves.
yes.
But then doing it in a team environment also brings so many ahas to others. And so that experience helps me as the coach get to know this team, the different makeup and dynamic with them as a
Right.
whole. And then being able to kind of have different conversations, interviewing them, getting a feel for the team and the individual perspectives is a good start.
Yes. That's great. Thank you. So back to the idea that as a team, coaching requires a focus on the team as a whole, not on a single person, not on the leader per se, but team coaching is about the group functionality, the
Yeah,
group functioning as one unit. And so the goals of team coaching are basically let's get it to where we're functioning as one unit. Let's build trust. Let's maximize our potential. Let's create an environment here where everyone feel we feel seen, we feel valued, and we don't feel like we don't know what's going on. I think that's a
yeah,
big piece of teams that are in this season of struggling. When we feel like we have an insider view, we feel more like part of the team, right? So a lot of this often comes down to communication standards, to the organizational leadership model that's in place. So
yeah,
are we talking about a top-down model? And if so, are we seeing a lot of people who are feeling sort of disenfranchised? And if so, could some coaching help with that? And the answer, of course, is always yes.
yeah.
Coaching can help with that. Um, so when you start working with the team, Tanisha, how do you assess whether they are in a place where trust is already built or whether we need to work on trust?
In most situations, it's the latter. You do have those teams though that trust is already built, but I think again, there's so many nuggets that you get from that, from the assessment piece, the self-awareness, and having that team experience, because you really start to identify where some of the barriers are when it comes to trust. The way that the team functions together, things that are and are not said during those sessions versus having those one-on-one conversations, how vulnerable people feel that they can be in those
Yes.
moments in front of their entire team, are indicators of whether or not there's trust there. Some things that are telltale signs is how safe does a person feel to make a mistake? So if you ask a team, how do you all handle it when someone makes a mistake? It's a really loaded question, right? That you would get a lot from that team just in body language alone, even if no one shares, right? Anything specific. So there's just different things that you can pinpoint that shows where trust is, and it really just comes down to how in depth are they willing to go in those
Mm,
sessions, or does it stay pretty surface level? Um,
right.
and one of the things that is important in learning a team is also learning the leader. And although the coaching isn't necessarily about the leader, but the leader does govern the goal in a lot of situations. And so you're interacting with that leader as well. And you can pick up on different things about their leadership style that could also be contributing to some mistrust that could be
Right.
trickling down on the team.
Yes. So, what is one specific thing that we can do or think about or look for to help a team start seeing itself as a unified unit, as a whole?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that any unified function needs is that everyone is clear on the goal. What are we here to do? And why does it matter? And then how does what you have to contribute connect to that?
Yes.
And that alignment helps to start to create a strong foundation that so many of the challenges that just naturally come from functioning together as a team, it helps to undergird that and keep the focus where it should be. And so,
Mm,
so many organizations, ministries, nonprofits, businesses, whatever it is, the mission is vital for whatever reason. And so if we can stay focused there on why we do what we do and how what I bring contributes to that why, it's going to really help when we have to navigate some challenges that come along with being a team.
yes. Not if, when.
For sure.
Yes. Okay, so I want to take a few minutes and share with our audience a couple of team development models that are pretty common in the Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership curriculum. I want to share those because I do think that understanding how teams work helps understand how we can coach teams. So we're going to start with Bruce Tuckman's team leadership, team development model, which is one that I found really helpful, just personally when I'm thinking about teams and if they're performing well together. So this model has 5 stages of team development. It starts with forming, so when the team is formed, then storming, and then norming, and then performing, which is where we want to get, it's where we want to live. And the final one is, if you're from Oklahoma, as Tanisha and I both are, it is adjourning, not adjourning. Who says adjourning? That I don't know. That's interesting. Anyway, so those 5 stages are forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And as you see in the image on the screen, there's this downward slope early in the life cycle of this team where team members, after they've gotten to know each other a little bit, they get into this predictable stage of team development called storming, which is basically conflict in competition and trying to figure out one-upping and figuring out, where you are in the hierarchy. And unfortunately, a lot of teams get stuck in this storming phase and spend way too much time there spinning their wheels and don't ever get moving towards the norming and the performing phases. and we want to get to the performing phase. So, Tanisha, look at this with me. This sort of like explains each of those phases of the model and then how coaching can support people who are in whatever phase they are in, right? So, coaching can play a key role in helping teams move from one of the less productive stages to that performing stage more effectively, and as quickly as possible. We want to get out of storming, definitely. That's not productive for us. So when we look at that and we see what coaching can do, which is here on our right hand side, what jumps out at you on that screen, Tanisha, as important?
I think one of the most important things that I notice here, in addition to just how coaching can help, is the dynamic that helps you identify where you are as a team. So if I was just someone, either a leader or someone on a team, being able to see that, oh, well, we're able to start resolving our issues, and we're building our relationship stronger. That puts us in norming. So having those identifiers, I think, is one of the more important pieces for that this helps us with. In addition to what coaching does to contribute to the growth of that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where do you think most teams struggle the most, and where do you think coaching is most valuable?
I mean, so you mentioned the storming, right? Which is the harder phase because
Yeah.
that's where the conflict lives. But I think that most teams struggle at any of the transition points, really.
Mm,
When we're going from forming to storming, or we're going from storming to norming. You would think, like, why would you struggle to come out of storming into norming? But because that's where you have to start actually applying trust.
yeah.
And anything that transitions to that next phase creates a new level of uncertainty,
Yes.
and it creates a new part of unknown. And so, obviously, going from forming to storming, that's hard because so many of us are wired and to avoid conflict.
Mm,
And you oftentimes don't even get teams that can actually get into the meat of what storming can produce in it, because
mm,
they're just avoiding it and staying kind of in this perpetual forming state that never produces anything. So I
right.
do think the transition points are the places where coaching can really, really help.
Yes.
Not just in like, hey, this is what you need to deal with what's happening in each phase, but okay, you're about to go into some difficult things.
Yep.
Conflict is normal. Conflict is healthy. These are the tools. This is how you navigate it. And there will be another side to this.
Yes, that's so good. And what a perfect segue to the next thing we're going to talk about. You are doing the work for me, my friend. So another model that it really complements the one that we just finished, is a model by Patrick Lencioni. This is another big one that we talk about in the MAOL here at Harding. But this model is about the dysfunctions of a team. So Patrick Lencioni's Five Dysfunctions of a Team is the name of a book. It's also just a really prevalent model or theory that we use in leadership development. And his framework really complements Tuckman's model by kind of like flipping the script and showing what happens when we're kind of moving from those phases, from one phase to the next. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we'll look at Lencioni's work just for a minute. This quote that's on your screen is probably one of the more highly cited quotes by Lencioni. And basically, he's saying that if we can just get everyone on that team rowing in the same direction, we're putting them all in a boat together, right? But everyone's trying to go in a different direction. But if we can just get them going in the same direction, then it doesn't really matter what's happening in the market. It doesn't matter what's
Mhm.
going on politically. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world around us. If we're rowing together in the same direction, we can be successful. It sounds easy, That's not always very easy to accomplish. But I think Lencioni's model gives us a really good foundation for understanding how to get to move in that same direction. So let's look at this, and then I'll ask you a couple more questions, Tanisha. When you deal with Lencioni, you have to start at the bottom. So it's like, every pyramid that you've ever seen for any other like educational environment, you start with the bottom because it's the foundation. At the bottom here, we've got absence of trust. And if you're in a team that has accountability issues, I can guarantee there are also trust issues. If there's conflict issues, there's also trust issues. So that foundational element is the thing that we have got to fix first if we're ever going to see any improvement in these other four layers of this model. So if a team lacks commitment, it also lacks trust. If it lacks accountability, it also lacks trust. You can see those 5 levels on the screen. So, Tanisha, when you look at that, can you share any insight for us?
I think you really hit it on the head in the foundational elements and how they build upon each other. And when one is lacking, you really don't get um, too many other things right. We often can look at a team and see a fear of conflict, and that might be what we focus on. But the absence of trust is where that begins. We fear conflict because we don't trust that we can navigate it and come out on the other side healthy. And so, not being able to be vulnerable, not feeling like I can disagree, or that my mistakes might not be received well, without there being some type of backlash because I, might disagree or something of that nature. And so when any of these things are present, when the invulnerability or the absence of trust is present, the whole team dynamic has to be dysfunctional.
Right.
And then everything else is just, but we typically are looking at the symptoms that are coming from that, the lack of commitment, the avoidance of accountability, when that foundational trust piece is really where we have to focus our attention to start to mend in order to get the other ones on board.
Yes, yes. I think that I found this graphic somewhere a couple of weeks ago and I found it very helpful. So it's saved on my desktop now. I like seeing that here on the left, we can see what, like a description of a high performing team. So a team that's not struggling with these issues. And then on the right, we see a dysfunctional team. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm going to tell you that I have a lot more experience with what's on the right than I have with what's on the left. I think a lot of us probably have more experience with issues with conflict, with issues with commitment within a team environment than we do with what we see on the left. Anything to add to that, Tanisha?
Just that I agree. And also, I find that because most of us looking on the right, that's just kind of what our experiences show. It almost can seem like the things on the left aren't possible. Like that's a fantasy. But to your point, it's hard, but it is possible that we can get there and have far more of those things in the high performing team, if we're willing to do the work essentially that it takes to accomplish that.
Right. Yes. So, like for our audience, as you're listening to us today, if you're looking at the screen, I want to encourage you to look down here at the bottom, the trust issue right down here. And if you're right now on a team where this is normal, then let's do what we can to move towards asking for help, sharing our struggles, sharing our weaknesses. And key, I think, is training ourselves to believe that the people that we work with are really doing their best and not assuming that they're not. So sort of like that idea, Tanisha, that we talk about in coaching of positive assumption,
Mhm.
looking for what people are doing right rather than what people are doing wrong. That that layer, that level of trust really goes hand in hand with
Yeah.
trying to assume that the people that work alongside us are doing their best, rather than not trying as hard as we think that they might should
Yeah.
try.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
I think that's spot on. I um did some work one time on learning different biases and fundamental. I'm going to mess it up. There's a bias ultimately where when we look at someone else's mistake, we see their mistake as some type of character flaw, a moral failure of some sort. But then when I look at my mistake, I'm like, no, it was circumstantial. And we have to be willing to fundamental attribution error. That's what it
Yes,
is.
yes.
And we have to be willing to, first off, be aware that our brains are kind of wired to do that. And then fight against that for the good of the team. And that's
Yes.
also where that perspective that we keep in our forefronts about what we're here to do and why it matters and how what I contribute to it aligns so that that becomes my own accountability to
Mm,
stay focused and hold me accountable for the things that I do that also contribute to that lack of trust that might be there.
right. Yes. So let's bring coaching back into this. How can a coaching conversation help the team rebuild trust? Or if they've never had trust, how do we build trust in a coaching conversation? How do we do that?
Yeah. So, with the coaching conversation, there are going to be questions that the coach brings about that help with that awareness piece, that help to kind of spark ideas and thoughts that the team hadn't thought of before. So, even bringing to the forefront that this behavior of how we look at someone's mistake and like the assumption of positive intent might not even be something the team even looks at as something that's eroding trust. And so
Right.
coaching will be able to bring about um, the awareness of whatever the team's norms are that are taking away from trust, and then solutions and the way forward that they can, strategize around who they are and how they work together that can keep that trust, as well as ways that the team coaching can bring about information on ways that the team can hold each other accountable for what they decide when it comes to how we're
Mhm.
going to build trust within each other, amongst each other.
Yes. 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 So for the next few slides, what we're going to do, audience, we're going to do a sort of a little bit deeper dive into each one of those levels of Lencioni's pyramid. So we've got a slide for each one, and we'll spend just a minute or two on each of those because I do think that those levels are key to team performance and understanding them, thinking through them, talking through them as a team together, as a coach, definitely. It provides you with the insight that you need to make positive changes. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to start with lack of trust, which again, I know I've said it multiple times, but it is the foundation for teamwork is having trust among the team members. So without trust, we're hiding our weaknesses. We're never asking for help. We are terrified or hesitant to admit that we've made a mistake. Coaching can rebuild that. It can create a safe space. It can open up the team to feel like they can say, you know what, I didn't do that well that one time, and maybe I need a little bit of help to do that better next time. Because remember, we're teaching or we're coaching an entire team. We're not coaching a single person. And so we need that entire team to be vulnerable and feel safe with one another. So, Tanisha, I feel like we've sort of talked about this a little bit, but um, I like this question at the bottom as a good example of a question to ask to help with building some trust. What would help this team feel safer about being open with one another? Do you have anything to add to that, or is that something that you've used?
Yes, and I think it's an effective question. Even if you don't get good answers right away, it's definitely something. Not every question is for the purpose of answers. Sometimes the question is just about sparking the thought. And I think that this is a good one because it plants a seed that it's possible.
Yes, it does. I love how you said that. That's wonderful. That's kind of what coaching does too, right? It's planting a seed, and then each subsequent session that you have, you see growth
Yeah,
after that seed has been watered. We'll just use some metaphors, okay? We love our metaphors in coaching.
for sure.
I do love the seed metaphor. That's a good one. So second, we're going to talk a little bit more intentionally about that fear of conflict. Full admission, I don't love conflict. I am happy to not have conflict with people. But I also know that when I bury my own doubts, when I don't talk about what is concerning to me ethically, personally, if I don't share that just because I don't want to be in conflict with someone else, bad things usually happen. I mean, eventually something bad happens. And conflict is actually a really healthy way for a group to see all possibilities. If we don't ask questions, if we don't push back on things, then all we're getting is one dimension, one single view of what something could look like. But when we do kind of lean into respectful conflict, respectfully asking questions, respectfully pushing back on ideas, then we're starting to build a 3D model instead of a 1D model. So Tanisha, what is a practical tool or a practical question you think could help with constructive conflict?
I honestly think that the best way to help a team navigate conflict is to facilitate it. Um, and I'm a fan of with their real challenges.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that in reading the five dysfunctions of a team, what Lencioni modeled in that story was how that was facilitated. Um, Taking a team and having them actually have a discussion about something true to their team that we have to kind of problem solve, and taking sessions to work through that so that they're able to kind of have a safe space to navigate conflict. We're telling them that conflict is a part of creativity and it's needed, and it is. But the humans involved have got to be able to kind of regulate their nervous system and bring their emotions down from how so many of us perceive it. And so creating a simulation, but with a real experience that they get to be attached to, I think is
Yeah.
a really good tool that coaching adds in helping teams navigate that.
Yeah, that's really good. And that reminds me, and I've shared this in other webinars on coaching, but it reminds me of the scarf um, metaphor or whatever we're going to call that, where scarf stands for status. It's, each letter.
Mhm.
It stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And a lot of times when we get into conflict with our team members, we are allowing one of those to just choke the crud out of us. Like that scarf is really jumping on our toes. It's making us uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
emotionally, we are really pushing back because something has made us uncomfortable,
Mhm.
right? But as Tanisha just said, those coaching sessions can bring that stuff out of our head and down and out through our mouth so that we can talk about them. And no longer do we feel like we're being attacked. We are able to talk through those disagreements or talk through why it feels like someone is choking me because my status has been like threatened in some way or another. So conflict and conversation must go hand in hand, and you are correct. Coaching can absolutely help with that. Let's go ahead and move on to the third tier of that triangle, and that is lack of commitment. Oh, this is a big one, right? Clarity, buy-in. These are important pieces for anyone to feel like they can commit to an organizational goal or decision. I think personally, a top contributor to teams or to organizations who are dealing with some sort of dysfunction is often a very strict top-down leadership model, um, where employees are told what to do without ever being involved at all in any of the decision-making process. So lack of commitment is often tied to this lack of trust, to a fear of conflict, but it's also tied to the fact that we don't feel like we have a voice. And so coaching can also help with that. So, Tanisha, what signs tell you that a team is not fully committed, and how can a coach help that surface?
Um, one of the biggest signs is the meeting after the meeting. So there's not a lot of disagreement or dissension at the point that the decisions are being made, but a lot of conversation afterward. Um, it happens so many times, and I'm asking a group of people. I can even ask this group of people how many times you've sat in a meeting and wanted to say something, know that something needed to be said, and opted not to. I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to keep my mouth shut for a number of different reasons. At any point that you have team members that's functioning in that way, commitment can't actually exist because they did not get to actually flesh out whatever the concern was, whatever the contribution was. And so when a team has members on it that doesn't feel like that they can contribute in the moment, there's going to be a lack of commitment present. And so that meeting after the meeting is definitely one of them, because people are keeping their concerns to themselves. And then another sign is whatever the decision is and whatever actions need to happen from that decision, the people involved can't seem to understand. They can't, I don't know how to move forward. And there's consistent questions around the thing that you're puzzled, like, why don't they get this? Because there are often times that there's a misunderstanding, and it's not that there's not understanding, there's a lack of agreement. And
Mm.
that lack of agreement contributes to, I don't know what to do to move forward. And so when you're noticing that you have, whether it's yourself or others, and they're like, I've explained this so many times, why aren't they getting it? It might not be a lack of understanding. It might be a lack of agreement that's kind of the barrier to them being able to move forward with it. And that's that lack of commitment piece that will hold a team up.
Oh, that's really good. That's really helpful. Thank you. So let's move to avoidance of accountability. One of my favorite things about coaching is that it reframes accountability as a support tool rather than a punishment. So for teams to work well together, we have to have shared expectations. We have to have shared measures of success, and we have to have sort of a shared responsibility of keeping one another accountable. One of my favorite reframing sayings that I've learned through coaching is that accountability means I count you able. So, Tanisha, if I'm keeping you accountable, that means I'm not punishing you. I'm not trying to catch you doing something wrong. It means I count you fully able to complete this task or whatever.
Yeah.
And I want to celebrate with you when you get that done because I count you able. I love that. I love that reframe.
Yeah.
What do you do with something like that, Tanisha?
I think that's really good, because to your point, that's what's necessary for accountability. I think it's our mindset around it that creates one of the biggest challenges in us being able to hold each other accountable,
Mm.
because it does feel like I'm trying to tell someone else what to do, especially a peer. But being able to reframe it to understand that this is what we agreed to. This is so that, again, our big picture, our big goal, of accomplishing what we know we can accomplish and what we can do as a team, it's going to require us holding each other accountable. And another piece of that is that all of us have blind spots. And so it's important that we can, as a team, that's where that trust is so important, that you can come to me with something that might be a blind spot that's interfering with the standard that we set for our work, for our goals. And as a coach, you can definitely use that to continue to drop that in for the reframing because that's the biggest piece I think that's going to be important for a team. And that's something a coach could definitely do to help shift that mindset that's going to bring that
Mm.
accountability and make it stronger.
Right. Yep. Okay, so the very tip top of our triangle is it's not in it, it's not in attention to results. It's in attention to team results. And so a really important distinction here is that people, it's not that they're not paying attention to results, because often we pay attention to our own results, but we're not factoring in the team results. We're not prioritizing team results. And if we are more concerned with our own personal successes than we are with the team success, that's when we have a problem. And that also, again, always ties back to trust issues. So coaching can help us shift that focus from individual success to a collective achievement. Tanisha, how can a coach help a team reconnect to this shared sense of purpose rather than only focusing on self?
Yeah, yeah. I think that one of the key things that a coach provides, even in a one-on-one dynamic, a coach provides an external perspective. They help to bring reflection to the
Mm,
client from that outside lens. And so it's same thing with the team, helping them stay focused on the collective goal, on the things that they've identified that they want to accomplish. That coach gets to be that mirror, that reflection to them, helping them to see not just where they're missing the mark, but where they might be hitting it.
mm,
And not quite able to see, because I think it is also important that we identify that they could also be not just let's help the team not be dysfunctional, but show them where they are functional. And I think that
yes.
that also helps with them being able to stay focused on that collective mission, especially if they don't feel like you know, it's a lost cause.
Right.
So definitely
Yes.
being that reflection that coaches are is huge for helping the team stay focused on their collective results.
Yes. Yeah. Audience, this is a pretty good time for you to put a question or comment for us in the chat. We have, I think, one more slide we're going to share, and we'll come back to those questions or comments before we end our time together. So please utilize the chat for us. We'd be happy to engage with you there. Tanisha, one of my favorite explanations of coaching is that it focuses on making space to listen, just making space, creating space for listening. And this is often a really big paradigm shift for team leaders who are much more accustomed to directing, to managing, um, to providing answers rather than asking questions or to listening. So why do you think giving teams space, time and space to talk is critical?
I think it's critical because of what you said. So many leaders unfortunately suffer from the reality that, or the belief that they think they're a leader and therefore they have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And in some way, shape, or form, if I don't, and I don't know the answers, then I am failing
Right.
at my
Right.
role.
Yes.
And providing that space and time for a team to talk, especially when the leader is present,
Yes.
really, I think is should be a relief for them because you get to hear more from your team,
Yes.
realize how much more they have to offer. The team itself gets more understanding of where everyone is. And I just believe that understanding is crucial um, in a lot of things, but really with a team. And so that space that gets opened up, a safe space for people to speak and be heard,
Yep.
lends itself to understanding that then helps with the leader realizing they have far more tools than they might be utilizing,
Yep.
helping the leader also see where they might be the barrier in the progress that they could be making because they feel like they have to carry it all on their shoulders. And they'll just realize how much more is available for the team coming together as a whole instead of that kind of top down, I have to be the one mentality.
Right. Right. That's really good. Thank you. Um, so just to sort of give our audience an idea of what a team coaching session might look like, it might be 60 minutes, it might be 90 minutes. And in that time, you really might only get to two or three questions because the focus is not on the team leader or really even the coach talking. The focus is on listening to how the team members respond to whichever questions are asked.
Mhm.
With all of these coaching webinars that we've hosted in the past, I've tried to give just some practical coaching questions that you might be able to use, whether you're a coach or not. Coaching questions work with colleagues very well. So there are 4 groups of coaching questions on your screen right now. In a team session, you would not ask all of these. You would choose maybe one from each of the 4. What's the word I'm looking for? Just blanked. One of these 4 sections, or let's say your team is really dealing with navigating conflict, then you might choose 2 questions from that page right there. But you wouldn't want to ask all of them because that means the coach or the team leader is talking more than the team members are talking, and that's what we want to avoid. Okay, so we are down to just a few minutes. I'm going to share this really quickly, and then we're going to go to our questions and we'll wrap up. I am taking a break from webinars for a couple of months after this one. I have a couple of other things to work on. So I would absolutely love your input, audience, on some ideas for when we resume our webinars for 26, 27. If you've got some good ideas for topics, for guest speakers, for something that maybe you've been struggling with or thinking about, you can use that QR code and fill out that form, or you can always email me at maol@harding.edu, and I would be happy to take your suggestions and happy to have a conversation with you. Okay, Tanisha, let's look at the chat and see what we've got. Let's see. Would you be able to put the Tuckman model graphic back on the screen? Kara Young, I will do that in just a minute. Jonty, I like the part about the meeting after the meeting. Been there many times. I think it's the fear that if you speak up, things still won't change. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah.
Tanisha, how would you deal with that?
It goes back to trust. It goes back to trust. At any point that I'm not going to speak up because I am afraid of, because there's a lack of trust that's there. And
Mm,
when there's a fear that things won't change, and there's a lot of reasons why that might exist, it also means that there's an absence of transparency on that team because they don't understand how we made the decisions that we made. How do we get here? Um, Also, in that space of lack of trust. And this is a big lift, and so it's more pie in the sky than I think a lot of people can sometimes accept. But there is a thing as coaching up or leading up,
right.
and when that trust exists, I can share that with my leader. I can say, things need to change, and I feel like we're kind of stuck. Kind of going back to what I said before, so many teams really need help with being able to get more comfortable with change,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of humans that just aren't, and they're resistant to it. So having that trust on a team where I can be vulnerable and honest about that
Mm,
fear makes the world of difference. And so whatever things that can happen to build that trust to get that team where they can start to have those hard conversations is going to help with that.
yes. Very good. Okay, Kara, this is for you. Um, is this what you wanted, or is this what you wanted? Let's see. Oh, wrong way. So we'll do that one first. This is for Kara. I'm gonna take a screen grab. And then this is the other one. And I'll leave that one up for just a second as we close out. I want to say this. Um, you've probably heard this is like all over LinkedIn, this like hashtag leaders are readers, and that's absolutely true. Leaders are readers, but I prefer leaders are learners because it's more than just reading it, it's learning it, it's applying it. And I think that what you've done today, audience, choosing for yourself to take time for some personal and professional development to learn more about something that could be helpful for you, that is absolutely the sign of a strong leader. And we are so grateful that you're doing that for yourself and for your team. We're grateful that you made time for us today. So thank you for that. Tanisha, thank you so much for saying yes when I
Yeah.
asked. It has been a pleasure preparing for this and then having this conversation with you. It's been wonderful. Audience, thank you for making time for us. We are so glad you did, and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Hi, thank you.